This week's Torah portion is called Shemini, and it comes from the book of Leviticus, chapters 9 through 11. We're reading from the very end of the parsha, as we completed the long and intricate list of the animals in the sky above and the earth below and the waters beneath the face of the earth, what is fit to be eaten, what is tahor, and what is unfit, what is tameh. Ki ani Adonai Elohechem, v'hikidashtem, v'hayitem kedoshim, ki kadosh ani, v'lo titma'u et nafshechem. B'chol hasheretz haromeset al haaretz, ki ani Adonai, hamal'eh etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, lihyot lachem le'elohim. V'yitem kedoshim, ki kadosh ani, v'zot torat habehema, v'ha'of, v'chol nefesh hachaya haromeset b'mayim u'lechol nefesh hashoretzet al haaretz. L'havdil bein hatameh uvein hatahor uvein hachaya hane'echelet uvein hachaya asher lo te'acher. For I, the Lord, am your God. You shall sanctify yourself and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not make for yourself unclean through any swarming things that move upon the earth, for I am the Lord who brought you forth out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall be holy, for I am holy. These are the instructions concerning the animals, the birds, and all the living things that move in the water, and all the creatures that swarm on the earth, for distinguishing between unclean and clean, between living things that may be eaten and living things that may not be eaten. For I am the eternal, your God, the one who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall be holy, for I am holy. What an interesting verse to begin this particular Shabbat. Let's set aside for the moment the fact that most of us are more connected to the ingredients of the foods that we eat because we're making those meals ourselves, staying home and eating in order to check the spread of coronavirus in our communities. We can leave the complexities of the biblical dietary laws for another day and another sermon in order to focus on the fact that these words we have read and the broader Torah which they represent are incredibly important to God. And I know that because these words follow after a long prescription of what we should eat and not eat, and they're followed by the words which serve here in the book of Leviticus and throughout the later books of the Torah as a way of emphasizing God's wants for us to take a particular note of a significant set of rules in the preceding words. For I, the Eternal, am the one who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall be holy, for I am holy. In other words, do this because I'm your God. Do this because I'm redeeming you from Egypt. Show me that just as I am holy, you can be holy as well. These words ring particularly relevant for our lives today, and not just because of their reference to the exodus from Egypt so soon after our celebration of Passover. You shall be holy, for I am holy. This is the essential value of the Torah, presented to us often as after this list of commandments, which, like the dietary laws, are enumerated without any specific explanation as to their purpose or their meaning. Do this because I'm your God. Do this because I redeemed you from Egypt. Show me that just as I am holy, you can be holy. Be like God in this essential aspect of holiness. But therein lies the challenge. What does it mean to be holy? The Oxford English Dictionary defines the word holy as an adjective, meaning dedicated or consecrated to God for religious purposes. And only as a secondary meaning does it add that the word holy can also mean morally or spiritually good. This gives us an idea of what we're talking about, but the Oxford English Dictionary unfortunately provides us an English definition of a Hebrew word in translation. The question at its core is not really what does it mean to be holy, because that's not what God has commanded us to be. The question really is, how can we be kadosh? And that is another question entirely. The Hebrew word kadosh doesn't actually mean holy in the sense that we should be more religiously or spiritually inclined. Not that that would be a bad thing. At its core, the root of the word kadosh means to be separate and apart from others. An interesting concept in a time when we're separating ourselves for social distancing in order to preserve life. Just as God has separated all the living things between those that are pure and therefore fit to be eaten and those that are unfit or impure. Oh, and by the way, don't feel bad for all the animals that have to be labeled by the Torah as being impure. Since not being eaten is the only point of the definition, I think that they won't have any complaint about that. The word kadosh, back to the point, means to set apart for a particular purpose, just as God is set apart in the unique categories of justice and righteousness and mercy, for example. God calls on us to be a goy kadosh, a holy people, which means that we must strive to be just and righteous and merciful, just like God. You shall be kadosh, for I, Adonai, your God, am kadosh. So being separated from one another is not a value judgment. It's not good or bad. Rather, it's an opportunity for holiness, an opportunity to act like God in our world, to care about life, our life, and the lives of those around us. It's a reminder that while we may be physically standing apart, spiritually, we are called to stand together, to be just and fair, compassionate and caring across the social distance, living out the godliness within us, and recognizing the godliness in every human being. A lesson on the compassion of social distancing, which has been waiting for us in the Torah for just this moment in time. And even more interesting is the lesson on the meaning of holiness, which can be found in the verse immediately before this one, the first verse I read this morning, which uses the same root for holiness, kadosh, to stand apart, but in another form. It says, because I am Adonai your God, you shall sanctify yourself and be holy, for I am holy. And the Hebrew word there is hit kadashtem. Hit kadashtem is the Hebrew word, which is a very rare form of the word kadosh. But we know it because it comes from the Kaddish prayer. Yit gadal v'yit kadash. Glorified and sanctified may be God's great name. Hit kadashtem is the very word that we use to translate because while it's something to do with holiness, the form of the verb, that itkada part at the beginning that spits out of your mouth before you get to the root, it can mean any number of things. The great biblical commentator Rashi says that it means to make yourself holy, that it's our responsibility to bring holiness into our lives. And that's the way most translations go because, after all, he's Rashi. And because many of the words that have that beginning are reflexive in their meaning that you take the word and you do it to yourself. Like, for instance, the word rachatz, which means to wash. Itrachetz means to wash yourself. So, according to Rashi, when God says, v'hit kidashtem, God means we should purify ourselves. Another reminder that we should be washing our hands to keep ourselves kadosh and safe. I try not to disagree with Rashi because he's almost always right, particularly on the literal meaning of the text. But there is another way, perhaps a better possibility for this rare word, this rare form of the word kadosh to be translated. The word in Hebrew halacha, or halach, means to walk, which is the root of the Jewish word for law, halacha, a good word to be used to understand the meaning of the Torah. Lehitalech, however, means to walk back and forth or to pace, because sometimes this form of the verb can mean the repetitive, to do something again and again and again. So when God says here in the Torah, v'hit kadashtem, that might also mean that striving to be like God in justice, righteousness, and compassion is something we have to remind ourselves to do again and again and again, because it's important. Both translations are possible, and both would teach important lessons for our lives, just different lessons. But there's one even more rare meaning of this rare form of the word, and of course I would have Rabbi Gelia to thank for this most unique possibility of meaning. She reminds me that the word katav means to write something, like a letter or the Torah. And lehitkatav is the word for correspondence, to correspond through writing from one to the other, back and forth. This might yield the best understanding of the word v'hikdashtem and the meaning of the holiness which resides within it. The back and forth exchange of holiness between God and God's people through correspondence, through the words of Torah, and through living those words in our lives. That's the meaning of holiness. And that's what God would require. You shall be holy, for I, Adonai, your God, am holy. We are called this day from the Torah, and in every day of our lives, to be partners with God in the repairing of the brokenness of the world. That's what it means to be holy. May our hands be God's hands, building a world of justice for all to share. May our hearts be God's hearts, bringing compassion in encounters every day. And may our eyes be God's eyes, seeing in every soul that spark of the divine, which is the truest meaning of kadosh and God's way for living in our lives today. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me now in the blessing